Guys, welcome back. We left off at the beginning of chapter 13 of Witchlings here. Now, before we begin, as always, we're going to take a deep breath in and begin. The Gran had been angrier than Seven had ever seen her when she announced via telecast that the uncle had been taken. They'd found only one shoe, a trail of blood, and a half-eaten bog pickle and chili mustard sandwich. The Gran had left Ravenskill on the very night he'd gone missing, meeting with the 12 Towns Council and combining their efforts to try to find him. The telecast had run a story on the uncle's life. Rulian Pennyfeather was an old man now, but he had been under the Gran's mentorship since he'd been chosen as an uncle when he was 13, the customary age. A bluebird had been the first animal to ever speak to him, which was why his uncle brooch was of the bird. The bluebird had sat on his shoulder, the story went, and warned him that he was about to step in a pile of goose poop. He'd run all the way to the Gran's home. The bluebird clasped tightly in his hands and told her he'd been chosen as the next uncle. In his excitement, he'd stepped in the goose poop anyway. It was a job second only to the Gran and an incredible honor. His parents had been proud. His coven, Frog House, had risen in fame, and now, by just about every estimation, he was probably dead. Seven shivered at the thought and hoped all the town gossip was wrong. On a more promising note, Seven had a new theory. Our talk at the Gran's cottage got me thinking. If the Night Beast doesn't have most of his minions anymore, it's the perfect time to strike. You said it yourself, Valley. That last cuckoo was nearly dead, so we'd only have to fight a weakened, hibernating Night Beast and an injured, smaller cuckoo. She had messaged Valley and Thorn the night before. That's actually good thinking for once, Valley had responded. And if it was willing to risk its life to take the uncle, it might mean that the Night Beast is getting hungrier for grown witches. And that could mean it's almost time for it to emerge, Thorn added. Exactly. We should go as soon as we can, super early morning before the cursed forest creatures wake from their sleep, Valley said. So we can go search tomorrow. Be ready, Seven had said. The Witchlings were up before the sun on the very next day. We can start right here, where the uncle was nearly taken yesterday, and where you both found Beefy, Valley said as they stood at the edge of the cursed forest. It was foggy and cold out, and still so dark you could see the stars and a sliver of the moon. But soon, the sun would rise over the boggy Crone River. It was time to execute their plan, visit all the known locations of the Bay Hibe Rose, in hopes that one might point them to the Night Beast. If they found it and it was daylight, they would come back to fight it, but at the very least, they'd know where to go. Seven pulled out her floral field map, where she'd marked all the places they could find the flower beyond the cursed forest. There are fields of Behibi roses just beyond the Spectre Lagoon, Seven said. That's the first place to look since it's the closest to town. If the Night Beast passed by this field when it arrived in Ravenskill, the flowers will be dead and we'll have an idea of at least a part of its path. Like breadcrumbs, but dead flowers, said Valley. A Spectre Lagoon, said Thorn. Is it filled with ghosts? She whispered the last word. Seven smiled nervously. Well, yeah. But no need to be scared. Most ghosts are real nice. Thorn clapped once and smiled. I love ghosts. Seven and Valley exchanged a look. Just when you think you know a witch, said Seven. They each took a small nibble of shushroom to quiet their steps and crossed over into the cursed forest. It was much colder in the cursed forest, and as if on instinct, the witchlings pulled closer together. Seven flinched when Valley's shoulder touched hers, but she was too cold and too scared to pull away. They walked quickly and without a sound, passing long shadows and the ominous snicker of the mischievous Duins, who could take your rucksack just as easily as they could steal your memories. Seven's fear rose with every second that passed. For what seemed like the 200th time, she went over their plan. She touched her pockets to be sure she had her foxglove darts. She recited their combat spells under her breath. They had been walking for over 20 minutes now, the woods thick and dark despite the daylight that must be approaching outside it. It was like they were in a massive, empty room with thick curtains pulled all around them. As they walked, Valley inspected tree after tree, looking for night beast or cuckoo hairs, and poking at animal droppings and shaking her head at Seven and Thorn. No luck. The night beast should have left some trace when it traveled into Ravenskill. The cuckoo should leave traces whenever they venture out of their den. But it's like they're hairless and don't poop or something, Valley said. We're almost there, said Seven, conferring with her map by the waning light of the moon and stars. The lagoon is at the edge of the cursed forest. Just beyond it should be a big field with our flower. The witchlings picked up their pace, which was proving difficult as their boots sank into the dark red mud. Just a little farther, Seven said. I can see the light breaking through the trees up ahead. It was the deepest into this forest Seven had ever been, and she begrudgingly admitted to herself that Valley had a point about their timing. She never imagined they'd get through the cursed forest so quickly and without incident. A blue light pierced through a wall of brambles ahead and pulled Seven from her thoughts. The Spectre Lagoon. They'd reached the edge of the cursed forest. How are we going to get through these brambles? They look painful, Thorn asked. We can find another path, Valley answered. It might take longer, but there is no other path to the Behibi roses. There'll be brambles anywhere between this side of the cursed forest and the fields, said Seven confidently. We can try a spell. The machete spell is silent. Oh, you're right, Thorn said. It's not a good idea, Salazar. Trust me. Seven resisted the urge to scoff. Trust Valley? Yeah, right. It had been her idea to follow the cuckoos before they were prepared, and look how that turned out. Seven knew the only way to get something done was to do it her way. I'm gonna try it, Seven said. She threw her arms up dramatically and tilted her face towards the sky, trying to pull as much magic into the level 4 spell as possible. Wait, Seven, don't, Valley said, but it was too late. Machete, Seven said, making a cutting motion with one arm. Red light cut across the air right in front of them with a loud crack, throwing them back and into the mud. It made the air so hot, Seven's curls were plastered to her forehead in an instant. But it had worked. The brambles that once stood before them were completely gone. The trees on either side of them charred. Had the spell not thrown them back, they would have been charred too. Holy rats, said Thorn. That was cool. Are you bonkers, Salazar? Valley seethed. You almost got us all killed, and you probably alerted every monster in Ravenskill. Valley struggled to her feet, slipping in the mud as Thorn got up and helped Seven do the same. I didn't think it would actually work, said Seven. I've tried that spell a dozen times, but never in the cursed forest. Magic here is corrupted and weird, and it's not safe to use it if you haven't completely mastered it. Valley was wiping the mud from her coat. At least the brambles are cut. Look, Thorn pointed ahead, and there, through the now open path, was a lagoon, shining with beautiful crystal clear waters and what looked like hundreds of blue lightning bugs. The Spectre Lagoon, said Seven. Come on. They ran towards the edge of the forest, and all at once the mud began pulling them down. What was left of the brambles and the trees around them reached out and caught on their cloaks and rucksacks. What's happening? Yelled Thorn. The forest is trying to keep us from leaving. Don't try that little trick again, Seven, or you'll barbecue the three of us. Can we fight about this later? I'm up to my knees in cursed mud, Seven said. Indeed, both Seven and Valley had been so busy scowling at each other that they hadn't noticed the moment they'd sunk almost to their knees in the thick red mud. Thorn had managed to grab onto a vine from the Spectre Lagoon and was pulling herself out. Hold on, she yelled as, with a great effort, she got out of the mud and onto solid ground. The cursed forest made a smacking noise like lips closing, and Thorn shivered. Gross. Here, hold on. She stretched over and passed the vine to Seven and Valley and heaved. Mmm. Thorn pulled, and Seven tried to find purchase somehow, but there was just nothing to anchor herself to. The mud was too heavy, and it was sucking them both under. Give me more of the vine. I can't get a good grip, Valley said. I can't. There's no more, said Thorn desperately. Valley tugged hard anyway, pulling Seven deeper into the mud. Stop, Seven yelled, but it was too late. The vine snapped, and Thorn tumbled over with half of it still uselessly gripped in her hands. Quick, Seven gasped. Do we know any spells that might help? The mud was almost up to her shoulders now. My mind is goose poop right now. I can't think of a thing, Valley said. As Seven and Valley struggled in the mud, Thorn scrambled around, trying to find another vine to throw to them, but there was nothing. She threw her hat off in frustration, her face red and streaked with tears. I don't know what to do. I can't do this again. She looked around desperately and then began to yell, Help! Somebody help! Seven highly doubted that anyone would come to help them all the way at the edge of the cursed forest. I'll be right back. Thorn ran the few toadstools toward the Spectre Lagoon, and as she entered through the curtain of the willows surrounding the area, what looked like hundreds of red eyes opened and blinked out once. Thorn! Valley called out, but she was gone. The mud was touching Seven's chin now. Her heart was beating so hard she was sure every creature in the cursed forest could hear it. All around them, the forest was waking up after the few short hours of rest. Soon, they would have more than the mud to worry about, if they didn't drown first. Just as Seven was beginning to worry Thorn wasn't coming back, she emerged from the Spectre Lagoon with a stream of ghosts behind her. They were glowing a brilliant blue with red eyes. The swarm of ghosts descended on Valley and Seven couldn't help but scream. She could hear Thorn yell from the other side, but couldn't see. The light from the ghosts all around them was too bright. Suddenly, she was being pushed up and out of the mud and was flying in the air. Both Seven and Valley landed with a thud on the hard ground on the other side of the cursed forest mud trap, scared but alive. Thorn was doubled over, her hands on her knees and shaking. Don't do that again. I thought you goats were rat food. The swarm of ghosts floated back into the lagoon, and Seven struggled to her feet. Thorn, that was fast thinking. Thanks. Are you all right? Thorn straightened up and nodded, and Seven couldn't help but think how hard it must be for Thorn to watch people she cared about almost croak, just like she'd watched her brother be taken. We have to keep going before it gets any later, Valley said. Yeah, Seven said, still annoyed at Valley. Let's go. They ran through the Spectre Lagoon, where ghosts were yawning awake and chatting with one another. The lagoon was glittering and beautiful, with hundreds of sparkling lights and glowing plants. They ran along the edge of the lagoon on the, thankfully, solid ground. Some ghosts were sleeping in the bow of the trees, while others looked at them curiously. There were ghosts with hair rollers in, and others making what looked like glowing coffee. And one very animated ghost exercise class. Seven held in a laugh. It wasn't often you spotted a ghost in Ravenskill, but she had seen a few here and there. Never in tights and dancing to sick drum beats, though. Thanks, said Seven, waving as they passed. No problem, they all said in unison. The Witchlings broke through the lagoon to the other side, and they were officially out of the cursed forest. We almost didn't make it, Valley scowled. But we did, so chill, said Seven. You two are so busy fighting, you never noticed anything, said Thorn. Look. Before them was an enormous field of baby flowers, and they were very much alive. The flowers looked like a sea of pink, undulating in the wind. They looked almost holographic, like they were glowing from within. Rats! Cried Seven. All that for nothing, Valley said, but there are more flower patches to check. Seven knew Valley was right, and it would have been too lucky to find a trace of the night beast on their first try, but she was still disappointed, and now they'd have to go all the way back through the cursed forest. I've I've never seen glowing flowers like this before, said Thorn. They're pretty. I don't think they're supposed to glow. Maybe these do because of how close they are to the cursed forest, Valley said. Seven quirked an eyebrow. Hold on. Seven crouched down near one of the flowers and touched its petals softly. She pulled a small vial from her rucksack and poured 2 droplets of a clear, glittering substance onto one of its petals. The flower shivered, and the pink of its petals began to run like it was melting. Oh my goats, said Thorn. As the color drained completely from the flower, it withered from a glowing pink to a dusty gray. It was dead. The flowers aren't alive, Seven said. They've just been enchanted to look that way. Who would go through the trouble of enchanting a whole field of flowers? Thorn asked. Someone who wanted to conceal the night beast, Valley said. Can night beasts cast spells? Thorn asked. Valley solemnly shook her head no. The witchlings were silent for a few moments. We can figure that all out later. We know the night beast is probably around here somewhere. Let's go find it, Seven said. I don't know. I'm afraid we've made too much noise already. We were supposed to surprise it, remember? We could at least find its hiding place, said Seven. Valley shook her head and sighed. Fine, but we have to be as quiet as possible. Thorn zipped her lips and threw away the key. We all know that doesn't work, Seven said, and they began to walk through the field and towards the mountains. The night beast will likely pick a cave, some sort of enclosed space to gather strength. The caves at the base of Oso Mountain are our best chance, Valley said. There are hundreds of caves in Oso Mountain, but with the enchanted flowers here, it was a sure bet that they were close. They walked carefully through the field, the shrubs quieting their steps. When they reached the edge, they crept toward the closest cave. Prince, Valley said, pointing in front of them. This is it. Get your sleeping tonic ready, Seven. We flood the cave with tonic, then attack. It feels kind of wrong attacking a sleeping monster, said Seven. Valley gave a small laugh. The tonic will make it woozy at best. Don't worry. We'll still be at a disadvantage. I'm just glad we don't have to deal with that big cuckoo, Thorn said. Valley and Seven nodded in agreement. I'll go ahead, Seven whispered, and they scaled the wall of the mountain towards the opening of the first cave. This was it. They were going to face the night beast. Seven was sure they could stop it and save Beefy from being eaten and themselves from being toads. They could save their whole town. They reached the mouth of the cave, and Seven looked back at Thorn and Valley. Ready? Born ready, said Valley. Thorn just nodded, but her face was white as a sheet. They were all afraid, Seven knew, but she worried the most for Thorn. Don't worry, Seven whispered. I won't let it get you. She swung the sleeping tonic into her mouth of the cave and waited. 1, 2, 3 seconds. It should take about 10 to permeate any space and knock out anything within. Masks, Seven whispered, and they pulled the enchanted anti-sleeping mask, courtesy of Thorn, over their faces. Let's go. They crept into the cave, their eyes adjusting to the darkness, but when they reached the far wall, they realized, empty! Valley threw her witch's hat to the ground. We were so close, said Seven, deflated. We were, and it escaped. Valley ran to another smaller entrance to the cave a few toadstools away and pointed at the ground. Look, fresh prints, going out of the cave. She ran out, following the tracks, with Seven and Thorn trailing her. They followed the prints for a few seconds until they reached the field with a fresh path of dead roses. It must have just taken off, Valley said. And look, more cuckoo prints. Let's follow the tracks, said Seven. They walked through the field in single file, following the giant prints. Seven thought all 3 of them could fit inside one print at a time. Stop, Valley said. Get down. The witchlings crouched in the field. A swarm of shadows danced in and out of view on the path just ahead. Shoot! Shroudeds, said Thorn. Is there a way around them? Seven asked. The 3 witchlings looked around for a way to bypass the shroudeds and still follow the prints. But they were bordered by Oso Mountain on one side and a marsh on the other. There was no way forward. They doubled back and out of the shrouded's path. We could have fought them, Seven said. We were so close. No way we could take on Shrouded if the Night Beast also joined in the fight. And yes, we were so close, Valley said, spinning on Seven. And it got away because of you. Me? Seven was offended. What did I do? You used that bonkers machete spell. The plan was to catch it by surprise, and instead you alerted everyone we were here. How was I supposed to know it would make noise? It was supposed to be a silent spell. Stop fighting, Thorn yelled. But Valley and Seven were too heated to listen. The fight felt like all the horrible things they'd ever felt about each other were bubbling over like a bad potion in a cauldron. I told you not to do it, and you didn't listen because you're a know-it-all. Seven stepped back. Ouch. It's a fact that spell is supposed to be a quiet one, or I would have never tried it. If you would have just listened to me, we would be fighting the Night Beast right now. Instead, we have to start from scratch. Our time's running out, and it's all on you. That's not fair, Seven said. What's it going to take for you to start trusting me, Seven? How many times do I have to prove myself? Valley was screaming now. Angry tears streamed down Seven's face. I don't know. Can you erase everything you did to me? Make all the hurt I felt go away magically? If you have a spell for that, go for it. You want me to suddenly start trusting you after you played mean tricks on me for years? Valley went silent at that, and the three witchlings stood there awkwardly. Maybe we can talk about this later. When you both aren't so angry, Thorn tried. Fine by me. I don't particularly feel like talking to Seven anyway, Valley said, and stomped off angrily in the direction of the cursed forest. You okay? Thorn asked Seven, who was wiping away her tears. Let's just go home. I've had enough of Night Beast tracking to last my whole life. Chapter 14. So, you lost your best pal, huh? Hey, wait up! Seven's heart caught in her throat at the sound of that voice. Poppy. Seven turned around as Poppy caught up to her, cheeks bright pink like she was either out of breath or embarrassed. Seven was on her way home after the failed Night Beast tracking that morning. Now Seven was standing face to face with her best friend, or ex-best friend. She really wasn't sure anymore. How you doing? Poppy asked. Oh, you know, I'm a spare witch with an impossible task and a Night Beast to defeat. And a friend who keeps ignoring me, Seven thought but didn't say out loud. So I'm doing pretty fantastic. Poppy frowned. I'm sorry I haven't been around much since the ceremony. You wouldn't believe the stuff they make you do for House Hyacinth. There's an entire course on the past covens, with super secret info and banquets and flying lessons. And it hasn't even been 2 weeks yet. I've been so busy. Seven tried very hard not to scream. It wasn't that Seven wasn't happy for her. Begrudgingly, but she was. At least one of them had made it into their dream coven. But Poppy was being a total warlock. She tried not to let the anger show on her face, but Poppy seemed to notice. Sorry. How's it been with Valley? Poppy asked. Believe it or not, she hasn't been the worst part of this whole thing. But I don't want to talk about Valley right now, Seven said, remembering with a painful pang the fight they'd just gotten into. Instead, Seven gathered all her strength and then just let out the things she'd been wanting to say. I'm mad at you, Poppy. Poppy took a step back. She looked shocked. Why are you mad at me? Because you ditched me. The second you got placed in House Hyacinth, it was like I was a ghost. You haven't sent me messages or called or anything. Seven, I just told you I was really busy. You're being selfish. I'm being selfish? Me? You mean your former best friend who was a spare and might die because she has to fight a murderous Night Beast, and you haven't even checked on me once because, let me check my notes, you were going to banquets? Seven's face was hot. Her whole body was hot, with anger and sadness and indignation. Poppy had always been the leader, the more popular one, the one adults trusted more, and Seven was always second best. She still was, but she hadn't thought that mattered, not so long as they were friends. But maybe they weren't friends anymore. Maybe they never were. It's not my fault you were spare, or that you invoked the impossible task. It was rotten luck. But don't take it out on me. I just thought you'd be there for me. That's all. I thought you'd still be my friend even if we weren't in the same coven. We are still friends. Friends talk to each other. They don't run away when things get hard. You left me behind, Poppy. Because I just feel weird around you and I don't know why. Oh, the words were like ice water, so cold it stung. A lot. They stood there in excruciating silence, and Seven wished a dragon would come and eat her alive, or maybe pick her up and throw her over one of the mountains around their town. Anything but this. Tears streamed down Poppy's face now, and Seven did not reach out and hug her like she had so many times before. You don't have to feel so weird. I'm still the same Seven. And I'm still the same Poppy, Poppy said. We're just on different paths now. Seven nodded and tried to hold back tears. She wasn't sure how much more crumminess she could take. She couldn't deal with getting into yet another fight today. She felt like everything was coming down all around her, and she didn't know how to fix any of it. I've got to split, Seven said coldly. Sorry about everything. It's okay. I'm sorry too. Poppy wiped her tears just as two of her coven members walked up to them, hooking their arms in Poppy's, their luxurious purple capes billowing softly in the crisp morning breeze. We're going for waffles, Poppy. Wanna come? Asked one of her coven mates, eyeing Seven with interest but not unkindly. Sure, Poppy eyed Seven sadly. See ya. See ya, Seven said, as she watched Poppy walk off with her coven, skipping towards one of the mansions on the hill and talking animatedly. Seven knew they weren't just on different paths. They were in two separate worlds. Chapter 15. Boggs Ferry Raccoons versus Stormville Lightning Forks. When Seven arrived at Thorn's 2 days after their expedition, it had been a bit awkward, with nobody daring to bring up their fight. Valley was acting as if nothing had happened, and Seven did the same. It was easier that way. Her nerves getting the best of her, Seven began to talk nonstop, and, over Thorn's grandma Lilu's famous fluffy pancakes, recounted the epic fight of the day before. Now they were on their way to a toad race in town. They had agreed they needed a day off, just one day to forget about the task, and their fighting, and the night beast. Forget Poppy Fairweather, Valley said on their way to the toad race. Poppy Mayweather, and I can't just forget her. We've been best friends since diaper days, Seven said. Sounds like the queen of the butt toast to me, Thorn said. Thorn, you've been hanging out with Valley too much. I heard that from you, actually, Thorn blushed. Roasted, said Valley with a triumphant smile, high-fiving Thorn. Seven put a brave face on, joking around and pretending her world wasn't completely upside down. The argument with Valley and then Poppy immediately after had given her a stomach ache that not even her father's soothing Guinehenweed tea could help. It was hard to focus on anything. Seven felt like she was a balloon with way too much air in it, and that any moment she might burst. At least they could just have fun today. How are we still having a match? There is a crisis afoot, one witch in the crowd, walking to the race, said. She has a point, Seven whispered to Valley and Thorn. It had been nearly 3 days since the town uncle was snatched from his bed in the middle of the night, and the town had been in absolute chaos ever since, which only seemed to add to the electricity in the air for the race. Every 4 years, the 12 towns had a magic tournament, the Golden Frog Games, where the towns would compete in everything from toad racing to spell casting to enchanted dressmaking. The tournament wasn't for another year, but there was a series of friendlies, matches that got the crowds excited for the oncoming competitions throughout the year before. Today, there was a toad racing match, and the Stormville racers had arrived to pit their toads against the team from Boggs Ferry, Thorn's old town. Seven was just glad Edgar Allan Toad had absolutely nothing to do with the competitions. They would lose for sure. Can't wait to see these toads race. It would take Edgar a week to complete a lap here, Seven said with a chuckle. How is Edgar Allan Toad doing, by the way? Valley asked. Cranky and slow. Same old. It was like nothing happened the other day with the cuckoo, even though he went flying like 20 toadstools. But the uncle spoke to him before he got taken, and he's fine, said Seven. He did ask for spicier flies, though, Seven smirked, and Thorn and Valley laughed. In the winter, every town sport took place in the Ravenskill Sports Egg. It was, like its name suggested, shaped like an egg on its side. It was white and gleaming, and the pride of Ravenskill, a town that took sports and competition very, very seriously. Seven was excited to watch the match and get a break from fighting monsters and getting stuck in cursed mud. Teams from the other 12 towns often came to the Ravenskill Sports Egg, or the Speg, as it was sometimes called, to practice, and often intertown matches took place there even when Ravenskill wasn't one of the teams playing. A big crowd was gathered outside the Speg, waiting for the doors to open before the match. Oh good, we're not too late for the rush, Seven said. The rush was how seats were picked. Witches ran like mad to get to the best ones. The key is, Seven said, gesturing the movements with her hands and explaining to Thorn, who had never been to a match at the Speg, to run under grown-ups' legs and get to the front of the line. You've got to crouch sometimes, but it's worth it. Sometimes witches cheat and use spells. But once you're inside, spells only work for team members and only spells that are allowed for the scheduled sport. If you try to do anything else, you smell like rotten eggs, Valley finished, her smirk widening. But that doesn't mean we can't use a spell now. Before Seven could protest, Valley whispered, Velos, waving her hand across all 3 of their feet. The spell moved quickly, like its name suggested, and took the Witchlings faster than fast towards the front of the line, ducking and crawling under grown-ups' legs as they did. Hey! Cheaters! It's the soggy spares! Yelled some of the other spectators, and Seven's chinks went hot from the name-calling. But the moment they reached the front of the line, the doors opened. The crowd rushed into the stadium, a stampede to get the best seats. Who's soggy now? Seven said as they ran into the arena and snagged courtside seats. They settled into the big, comfy seats and high-fived one another. I've never gotten seats this good, Seven said. Stick with me, Valley smiled. Food vendors walked up and down the aisle yelling, Grand popcorn! Popcorn just like your grandpa used to make. Or fairy floss, and Seven's stomach grumbled. I'll go get us snacks, Thorn said, and the other 2 witchlings nodded enthusiastically. Thorn was halfway up the stairs and running after a vendor when Seven realized she'd been left alone with Valley. All day Thorn had been there, so it wasn't too bad, but now it was just them. Aquatown, population 2. Seven looked out onto the racetrack, but there was nobody there but a lone witch spraying anti-cheating mist onto the assault. She was trying her hardest to avoid looking at Valley and avoid breaking the spell of whatever had kept them from going at each other's throat that morning. Thorn was like a magical buffer. It was hard not to be friendly when Thorn was around, if only because it made Seven feel like a crummy witch to be mean or have not nice thoughts. Seven fully intended not to speak, but then Valley cleared her throat. I've been meaning to talk to you. Oh no, here it was, the confession that Valley still hated Seven, that she had been pretending to be so nice for so long because of the coven, that the moment their circle was sealed, it was back to pranks and cruel jokes. I wanted to say, Valley paused, squeezing her eyes shut tight as if she were gathering courage, before opening them and looking right at Seven. I wanted to say I'm sorry. Seven opened both eyes wide in disbelief. You're sorry? Okay, I'm not great at making friends, and I think you've got the wrong idea about me. You've been bullying me for 2 years straight, Seven said. They were more like misunderstandings. You mean the rat in my backpack when you know I'm scared of them? The mayo in my shampoo? What about stealing my lunch money? Seven asked. Those misunderstandings? And what about the fight the other day? You said really mean things about me. Valley took another deep breath. I overheard you telling Poppy you wanted a pet. I had an extra pet rat and thought you'd like it. His name is Cotton Swab, and he's actually really nice. I trained him to find nightshade and doll's eyes since we're low on poisonous plants in Ravenskill, and I know you like plants. Also, he knows how to roll over. Seven's mouth fell open. What? The mayo was because you were complaining to Poppy that your hair was really frizzy because of the humidity. I read in my mom's magazine article that mayonnaise helps make your hair shiny, so that's why I put it in your shampoo. Seven shook her head. No. She couldn't have been jumping to conclusions this whole time. But you also said mean things about me, that I'm a know-it-all, and that I loved kissing Edgar Allan Toad. Which is why I'm apologizing. I'm not perfect. Why didn't you just talk to me? Tell me about the mayo and cotton swab instead of sneaking, Seven asked. I tried to surprise you with cotton swab, and that had not worked. Valley looked down, and Seven's cheeks turned red, remembering how angry she'd gotten, how she'd yelled at Valley for it. I didn't think you'd listen about the mayo either, but I swear I didn't think it would make you smell like boiled gym socks. You always just seemed so popular. I was scared if I tried to talk to you, you'd laugh at me. I had a grand total of one good friend at school, Seven said, and her stomach turned at the use of the word had. Poppy had been her friend. Not anymore. That's one more than I ever had, Valley said, her cheeks bright pink. Seven still thought Valley should have told her. Just because she hadn't meant to hurt her didn't mean she hadn't. Seven still had a right to be upset, but she could tell by the look on Valley's face now that she hadn't meant to bully her. At least not in those 2 instances. What about the lunch money? Seven asked. The lunch money was because... Valley took a deep breath again, and her voice hitched with the next sentence. My dad took food away for a bit as punishment for a bad grade. I was just really hungry and not thinking straight. But that's no excuse. I shouldn't have taken your money, and for that I am sorry, and I will pay you back, I promise. Valley held her head up, much like she had at the Black Moon ceremony, and Seven's heart felt like it had just shattered into a million pieces. I didn't start the thing about your toad, honest. Although I did laugh when someone else said it in class and gossiped about it with some other kids. I just wanted to be your friend, but kept messing up, and it made me angry. I shouldn't have done any of those things, though, or yelled at you yesterday and called you a know-it-all. It wasn't nice, and I'm sorry about that too. Things finally started making sense. The way Valley would run away after one of her pranks, how she never seemed to gloat in the moment, how she'd brush Seven off after, when really she was just trying to get away. It was not because she was a bully, it was because she was afraid, because she was hungry. How long did your dad keep you from eating? Seven asked softly. 2 days. Valley looked down at her black boots. It's okay. He said he was sorry. Does your mom know? Valley hesitated. No. She was out of town for a book thing that week, and my dad told me not to tell her. Things are better now, promise. It only happened once, and it was because I didn't do well on a test. It was my fault. Valley, that's never okay. You should always get to eat. Are you sure your mom... She can't know. Please, can we just drop it? I don't want to upset Thorn. But Valley... Please, Seven? Valley looked desperate. Fine, okay, Seven said. After a few moments of awkward silence, she cleared her throat. I'm sorry too. About not listening to you out in the cursed forest. I really didn't know about how the magic there would affect the machete spell, and I shouldn't have been such a butt-toad. Yeah, you kinda were, Valley smirked. Okay, Seven smiled. But I was too. Let's not be like that anymore. Let's try to, work together maybe, Valley said. Deal, Seven said. She felt warmer towards Valley than she probably ever had, but her mind was lingering on what Valley had said about her dad. Something told Seven she had to talk to someone about it. It wasn't the kind of thing you kept a secret. Just then, Thorn came back with an armful of snacks. What did I miss? Thorn's voice was muffled in cardboard and plastic wrapping. Valley and Seven helped her, and they all settled in for the race. As they ate their graham popcorn and chocolate-covered goose eggs, Seven looked up to the nosebleed seats. They were way, way up, and she knew that after they'd solved or failed the impossible task, they'd never be able to sit this close to a game again. It wasn't illegal as a spare to sit courtside or to switch jobs like Mrs. LaRue had said, but that didn't mean it was done. Spares usually came to games with their employers because they couldn't function without their assistance, but were relegated to the farthest, most uncomfortable seats, even if there was room closer to the court. Seven took a bite of the sweet, sweet fairy floss. It was onion and bean flavored, Seven's favorite, and sighed. There were a million little things she never considered about being a spare because she never thought it could happen to her. Now that it had, those things were crashing down on her, hard and fast. It was painful to note that even if they survived the night beast, even if they solved the task and avoided being toadified, their lives would still be worse than rats on a boat. Let's just enjoy today, like we said, Thorn said softly. Seven had been staring at the three spares sitting on the nosebleed seats, her eyes watering, and she guessed Thorn had noticed. Seven swallowed a big chunk of fairy floss. You're right, no despair for the day. She smiled at Thorn and turned back to the court just as the teams made their way out of the locker rooms. I've never seen the Stormville Lightning Forks play, Thorn said excitedly. A song by Kill a Goose started playing, one of Seven's favorites, to get her pumped before a test, and the lighting in the stadium went darker. I love this song, said Valley. Me too, Thorn said. The Goose is one of my favorite bands. The Witchlings said in unison and then began to laugh. As the rapid guitar riff went off, the Boggs Fairy raccoons emerged, their gray and black uniforms sparkling in the disco lights. Oh, that's Tia Stardust, said Thorn, pointing at their star racer, her eyes welling up. A second later, the announcer said, Number 4, Tia Stardust, and her toad, Bob. The crowd cheered wildly, and Thorn whooped and waved her witch's hat in the air. Tia waved at the cheering crowd as she ran in place, a number 4 forming in midair in sparkling lights courtesy of trained fireflies. Her jet black hair was cut in a short, blunt bob, just like Thorn's. Seven looked over, and Thorn was mesmerized. Tia was clearly her idol. The rest of the teams were introduced and cheered on by the crowd, and finally it was time for the race to begin. It would be a relay-style toad race today, with each toad hopping 131 toadstools before passing a baton to their teammate. 10 toads total were racing for each team, and the first to reach the finish line would be the winner of the race. It was the very first friendly, which often set the tone for the rest of the games for the year to come. Whoever came out as the favorite after the friendly matches was often a crowd favorite and, in any case, would have all eyes on them. The racers got into place and waited for the official song to be announced. All toads might not be as mean as Edgar Allan Toad, but they were all just as finicky. Toads only raced to music, specifically classical music, and winning depended not just on speed, but on how much they could keep pace with the rhythm of a song. They didn't hop or run a race so much as spun and danced their way to the finish line. It was no wonder Seven's Toad was the worst. He hated music and croaked loudly whenever she tried to train him using any of the approved classical music for training. Much of it was from the humdrum, what witches called non-magical humans world. And today's race would be no different. The announcer said Overture Suite No. 2 in B minor by Johann Sebastian Bach would be the racing song of choice. Oh, this should be good, Seven said, rubbing her hands together as the racers got into place. Stormville's number 8, Rifki Highmore, was the starting runner, while Boggs Fairy had La Sala Sparrow as their starter. They crouched in place, sizing each other up before carefully placing their toes on the rubber rainbow track, but not letting go just yet. Each toad held a baton, sparkling with the prismatic light of anti-cheating magic. On your marks, get set, toad! The announcer's voice boomed over the loudspeaker just as the music began to play, and the toads were off. The toads pirouetted and leaped gracefully with the music as they made their way to their team members. The crowd cheered wildly. Thorn, Valley, and Seven screamed and clapped as each toad completed its turn. To pass the baton, a toad grabbed the edge of the baton with its mouth and then wiggled until it was holding it at its center. One wrong move, and the baton would fall or go flying. which would mean precious seconds off their time. Each transition moved smoothly until the unthinkable happened. The Stormville toad dropped its baton in the very last second, and the crowd gasped in unison. Bob, the bog's fairy toad, took the lead. The final Stormville toad, Jessica, scrambled to recover, while the bog's fairy toad took off at a ferocious pace. The witch team members ran alongside the toads on the side of the track, yelling dance moves and encouragement to their toads, sometimes splashing them with small amounts of water to keep them moisturized and limber. "Oh my goats! Oh my goats!" Thorn screamed as all three witchlings leapt to their feet and leaned over the railing. By now, almost the whole crowd was standing, and so loud, you could barely hear the music. Bob raced expertly towards the finish line, spinning into several brises before taking huge, graceful leaps, just moments away from snagging the win, when Jessica unexpectedly zoomed forward with a series of masterful dance steps, tightening the impossible gap between them. The crowd exploded with excitement. Tia and Plip Flapper, the Stormville witch, waited on the other side of the finish line, crouched down, screaming support for each of their toads. "It looks like this race is not over yet," the announcer narrated over the loudspeaker. "Will Bob come out on top again, or will the scrappy Jessica snatch victory from his clammy hands?" The toads pranced and twirled and shimmied to the finish line where, with one final croak and sidestep, Bob passed the red ribbon, victorious. "Tia! Tia! Tia!" The crowd chanted in unison. Thorn jumped up and down, screaming so hard her face was red as she hugged Seven and then Valley, until all three witchlings were jumping and screaming together, breathless and sweaty, and not thinking about anything but the happiness of this moment. Tia Stardust met Bob with a tiny high five as he hopped into her waiting hand, and she picked him up and waved at the wildly cheering crowd. A megaphone rose from the ground, and Tia went over to meet the announcer in the center of the arena. "What a rousing race," the announcer declared. "Congratulations to the Bog's Fairy Raccoons on this amazing win. An exciting start to the gaming season. Normally, our town grand or uncle would present the prize for the first place, but..." The announcer shifted uncomfortably, and conspiratorial murmurs spread throughout the stadium. "They cannot be with us at present, so I'm afraid I will have to do." He held out a small stone trophy in Tia's direction, and as soon as she grabbed it, Bob jumped inside it. Thank you, Ravenskill and the Toad Race League," Tia said, holding the trophy close to her chest now as she leaned toward the mic. "I know that there are some dark times falling on the 12 towns right now, but together we can overcome anything. I believe in us all and want to give a special message to my coven, House Hyacinth. You have helped me make who I am, and for that, it's only right that I'll be bringing home the 12 Towns Cup next year." A wave of purple capes roared in the audience as House Hyacinth celebrated their champion. Seven tried not to feel jealous, and she tried not to look for Poppy in the large patch of purple in the crowd, but she couldn't help it. Thorn squeezed her hand, and Valley shoved her lightly. Seven smiled, grateful for Thorn and Valley. "Come on, let's get out of here before the rush," Seven said. As the witchlings made their way through the still cheering crowd and towards the exit, Seven couldn't help but wonder if there was more to Tia's comment about dark times in the 12 towns, and she wondered if there was any chance the fear prickling up her spine was right, because Seven had a very bad feeling that, whatever it was, it had to do with them. And we will stop here for right now. We will continue with chapter 16 in the next video.